here, and thanks for coming along. Can I also, I understand, congratulate Councillor Mogford, who's going to be the mayor next year, I understand. Is that right? Yeah, see, news travels fast on the grapevine, so many congratulations. So, item 1 then on the agenda, apologies for absence. Okay, Councillor Cox. Any declarations of interest? Yeah. It's Don's declaration of interest need to go on his yeah, that's okay. If there aren't any, item 3 then, minutes of the previous meeting, pages 3 to 10, and they are for correctness only. Someone prepared to move, please? Norma, sorry.
Chair, could I just make one point on the minutes beforehand? First of all, it's good to see they're well written and they're very clear. But my only concern was the failure to record what the Director of Social Services actually said in her update. And I think it's items 8 and 9. It just said that she gave an update. Well, actually, these are for public record. And I thought it would be good if we could actually record what was actually said, because anyone reading it will have no idea in terms of what the committee was told in terms of those issues.
I think the reason was it was a very short update because there was a fuller report coming to us today. I think that was the position, Rhys, wasn't it? Was it just a broad update and then we were going to deal with the matter today?
It was partly that and partly my incompetence, because I had a written update from Social Services, which I read out on behalf of Sally, and I forgot to send it over, which I will do, and we'll attach it to the... So I do apologise to the committee for that, and to Anne.
And if we could note that in the minutes, Rhys acknowledges his incompetence. No, that's okay, Rhys, but that was primary because we got the okay, any other points? If there aren't any other points, someone prepared to move them as a correct record, please? Councillor Jordan, thank you. Can I have a seconder? Norma, thank you. All in favour? Thank you very much. Item 4 on the agenda then is the internal audit. Oh, sorry, my fault here now. Before you come in, Myrian, I'm going to invite our colleagues from Social Services to present their 2 updates, because I'm sure they'd like to stay here for the rest of the meeting, but I understand they've got other things to do. So if we deal with item 8 now, which is the Children's Service Safeguarding Children's Money first, and then we'll deal with number 9. So whoever wants to start off at number 8, over to you.
Mic on. Hi, everybody. Just to obviously feed back to you, you'll probably note in the updated report, I hope you can hear me okay. Oh, it's the most technical thing I've been faced with. Hopefully you'll note in the report there's an action plan attached, and what you'll note from the action plan is that all but one of the actions have been completed. There's been a timescale in terms of the completion period. I think the main bit to sort of share with you, one of the actions that was identified under a medium risk, which is the development of a corporate parenting strategy. We are in the process of finalising that piece of work. Unfortunately, one of the key members of that group sadly passed away, and they were based in education, so we've had to regroup together as a group. We've got a new representative, and we're just in the process of consulting with children and young people to finalise that bit of work. So really just the key thing to say to you is all the actions that were identified, we've now implemented them. We have the appropriate resourcing in place, and if anybody's got any questions they want to ask me, feel free to.
Any questions? Norma?
Was that point in relation to the adoption allowances or safeguarding children's money?
It's this one. Safeguarding.
Oh, safeguarding. It's on the safeguard, yeah.
Tom.
Comment or question, or it's a combination?
Go on.
Sorry? Go? Okay. I read the report, and just a couple of things from my point of view is that just for if a report's coming here, could I ask that your paragraphs be numbered rather than just have point forms, because it's much more easier for us to follow and to refer back to the points. The other thing that I got confused with is your colouring system. Because when the end, I'm assuming that if it's complete, it should say complete, and if it's complete, I would usually see a green, whereas on some you've got complete, and on some you haven't got anything, but it looks as though it's done. So I would just it would be better if that was a little bit more transparent for us. That was all.
Could I just clarify? I'm aware that on the children's savings, that was identified in green. I just want to make sure that we're talking about the correct action plan. So you'll note on the first one, it's actually in green and does say complete, but obviously I'm assuming you're referring to the second report.
Sorry, if that's the case. Okay.
Are we okay there? There's still no confusion, is there? Because we're talking about the children's money report.
Just to sort of confirm, I do understand and take your point, though, about the numbering. That is something that I will make sure happens in future. So thank you for that feedback.
Okay, any other questions? Clearly, from an internal audit base, someone needs to just carry out a follow-up inspection to ensure that, whilst we've got the tabulated form saying everything's hunky-dory, that's okay. But I see Dan's up there, yeah. So if we could just get a review of what's taken place, and if that can be, I don't know whether you can deliver that by the next committee, or do you need a committee after that? Dan, sorry.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, no, that's already on our radar to make sure that we look at both of those areas to get the evidence and make sure it's not just, checking our own homework sort of thing. So yeah, that's on the plan.
Okay, great. If it can be done for next audit committee, that would be great, and then we can release our colleagues from social services and let them actually get on with the business they should have been doing previously in regards to this area. Any other questions? Any comments? No. Okay. You see the recommendation that we've considered the contents of the report. We note the recommendations and the action taken to date, and we await a further update report from the internal audit service, hopefully by the next committee. Someone prepared to move, please? Thank you, Councillor Harris. Can I have a seconder? Councillor Horton. All in favour? Thank you very much. Item 9 then, we've got the adoption allowances resulting in a third and satisfactory report. Sorry, Rhys? Oh, Sally, sorry.
No, that's okay, Jess. It's just an observation in terms of when things come back to the next committee, because obviously we want to ensure there's enough time to put in place what we're doing, and I think that's the one element. And I'm sorry, I'm being attacked by a cat at the same time here. But just an observation that in terms of particularly the adoption allowances, we need to allow for the period of review, and until that comes up, and that won't be in time for the next committee meeting. So it's just a plea to make sure we get the timing right in terms of the revisit from audit in both of these to give time for the actions to take place. Otherwise, we're going to be reviewing a situation, or audit will be looking, and we won't actually have had an opportunity to implement the changes that need to be made. So I don't know whether or not, Daniel, if we could have a discussion perhaps offline just to get that timing right. But Chair, that might mean it's not the next governance and audit. It might be after that, just to allow for that timing. Thank you.
Yeah, Sally, can I leave that to you and Dan to sort out? So we won't minute it for the next agenda, for the next meeting, but certainly within the next 6 months. How's that? That gives you a bit more time, doesn't it, to embed things and make sure everything's working.
Thank you very much. Thank you,
okay?
Chair. Thank you, Daniel.
Lovely, thank you. So we're on to number 9 then, which is the adoption allowances.
Thank you, Chair. Much like the children's savings, we've implemented a new process. We have process maps in place. We've got the All Wales adoption policy, and the adoption allowances are considered under the children's financial policy. We've got new resource in place, and we've got staff now who are undertaking these reviews of the adoption allowances. However, the adoption allowances are undertaken annually around the June time. So all of these processes are in place, but obviously won't be reviewed until June because they were reviewed last June. So ultimately it would be beneficial, I think, for us and potentially audit for those reviews to have been undertaken to then be able to audit those to see whether we are completing
So is
them
that 6 months beneficial then? So that will take us to July, August?
They start in June.
Right.
So they tend to run between June and August. So we were hoping beneficially would be September. I have accounted for that in the report, but obviously we'll take guidance from yourselves, and I know Sally will speak to.
Yeah, I don't want to put any undue pressure on you. If the results are not going to be coming out until September, October, then I'd rather have the results rather than put you under pressure and get half the story. Yeah. So if I leave that with Dan and Sally and yourself to discuss that, and then, we just need the full report really and end the story. I don't want to put you under any other pressure.
Absolutely,
so
thank you, Chair. And I do take under advisement the comments that were made, because that is my report where it hasn't gone green. That's my error. They should be in green because they are completed actions, and most certainly in terms of the numbering of the paragraphs. Okay,
you've got the report before you. Any questions? Norma.
Thank you for the report. It's good to... Sorry. It's on here. I'm on here, I think. Yeah. Thank you. We don't go for technology. Picked up. Anyway, thank you for the report. And it's good to see, that action has been taken to address this. This was a real concern to the committee. I've got a couple of things. One I'd like some assurance on. But reading the paper, when it just says completed, it doesn't give us assurance that all those things that needed to be done have been done. It just says completed. So when I was reading it, I was saying, completed? So what was done? Where's the evidence, really, that you've done this? I think you need to be looking at that. The other point I'd like to make is that on 206, when I read the progress, it didn't seem to appear directly to the identified weaknesses. So perhaps you could look again at that. For me, anyway, I struggled with it. And the thing I'd like assurance about is that what I think we're picking up in the committee is why a lot of these issues arise is ineffective management, oversight, managing people, making people assure that they know what they're doing, they've got processes in place that they follow, and management is checking that that's been done. You now have got the processes in place, but I think as a committee member, I'd like assurance that management is giving the guidance and is overseeing the work of other people, because that is absolutely fundamental. And I think these issues wouldn't have arisen if it was effective management in your area. Okay?
Yeah, I'm sure the officers can take that into account, and I'm sure that Dan, and when he comes in, can also pick those issues up to make sure that those processes are in place and people are actually taking accountability and responsibility for the services they are providing. So I think we're at where we're at here. Picking up Norma's point, if we deal with that when you do the fuller report with Dan, I think that would be a lot better than trying to do it on the hoof tonight and pick it up.
Thank you, Chair.
Okay. Any other questions? Any comments? No. The only other thing is there's no recommendation in this report, which I should have picked up before. So I think the recommendation is to note the comments of the report and await a report back in September or when it can be agreed between the director and audit. Is that okay? Someone prepared to move, please? Thank you, Councillor Jordan. Seconder, Councillor Mr. Reid. All in favour? Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, colleagues, for coming along. As I quite reasonably say, you can stay if you want and have a little listen in to how business is done in the other part of the authority. But, feel free to go. Thank you very much for coming along. Lovely. Thank you. Okay, back to number 4 now, Marion. I stole your thunder a bit, and I know Dan's up there again. So the Internal Audit Plan Progress Report, pages 11 to 22. Dan?
Thank you, Chair. So to talk you through some kind of key points from the report, so the report runs up until the end of December 23. As is well known, there's obviously been challenges with staffing throughout the year. The current position on staffing is that we've got the one kind of long-standing principal auditor, but we've also now got 2 auditors on board. They've been with us for 6 to 8 weeks now, both doing really well. At the time of writing this report, we are currently in the recruitment phase, looking for another principal auditor and a senior auditor. We held interviews there, however, unfortunately were unsuccessful. So position being at the moment, we've got myself obviously doing the interim kind of top level role, 1 principal auditor, 2 auditors, and then the external support from my main role at Swap Internal Audit. Recruitment, just for the time being, will pause with the team that we've got, and we've got plenty of work going on at the moment in terms of getting towards year end for that annual opinion. So all focus is around that, really. With regards to delivery, the percentage of delivery versus target is below, as I think everyone probably expect it to be. As I've mentioned previously, the focus has been around making sure that we target the assurance, the opinion-based jobs, to get as many of those completed as possible. Of the 48 opinion-based jobs for 23-24, not including the 13 which came over as finalisation from last year, we're looking now at a kind of outturn for year end of 36 reviews. The last time I gave an update, we were at 34. Things are progressing well. You may see within the appendices, actually at the time of writing this report, we were at 17 completed jobs. And I know that's a big jump between the 2, but actually since that point, we've got four others now, which are in progress here, which are now at reporting stage. So things are progressing well. It was just a bit of a lag over the Christmas period, but I'm confident on that figure I just provided to you. In addition, as you can see in point 10 on the report, is that arrangements are now in place for my counter-fraud colleagues at Swap to perform a fraud risk assessment. Initial discussions have been held for that with Marion, Head of Finance, and plans are being put in place to deliver that over the next 2 to 3 months. So that will be done. There was also, when I came in, an overdue review against the public sector internal audit standards. Again, things had to be prioritised in terms of what we needed to do. I've now put the ball kind of rolling in terms of getting that done within Q1 of 24-25 to make sure that we're back in the kind of timeframes of compliance there. So things are moving there as well. That was probably all I was going to mention there, I think, but obviously more than happy to take any questions about the progress report.
Yeah, thank you for that, Dan. Any questions? Don.
Daniel, I was going to ask, and I think you provided the answer later on the report about the swap counter-fraud team. I was going to ask, will the results and the report come to the G&A committee here? But I think it's due to come in July 24. Is that correct?
That's right. That's what we're doing at the moment, just to be kind of conservative on it. Yeah, so the outcomes will come to you, and the thought is that wider than that, is that actually the results of that can help inform some of the internal audit work going forward as well.
Right. Okay.
But yes, to your question, yeah.
Okay. I note in the report, and this isn't a negative comment, I read the report and I thought it was really good. I've noticed there's no financial training been done, and I'm really okay with that, considering what the rest of the work you're doing. But I wondered, in your view, are there risks to the organisations because there is no financial training going on, and almost what do you perceive them to be, and are there mitigating actions being taken?
Yeah, so we've got back on. I'm glad you asked about that, because in January we held one again, and it was a big mop up. So the usual figure of people we get on there is around about 10, but we had 40 on it in January as a mop-up for the bit of period that we've missed. So yes, it was a loss in terms of what we weren't providing for that period, and I think it's better for doing it, of course it is, and we're now implementing getting that back in place again, and like I said, one happened last week.
Right. Gareth, can I ask one more question? This one's on page 18, where you've got the schedule, in Appendix B, showing the 17 that you referred to earlier. I was just wondering whether it would be possible if we get a snapshot of what it was like 12 months ago, so we've got something to compare it directly against, so just as a committee we can spot directions of travel. Would that be okay?
Yeah, no problem.
Are there any other questions? Norma?
Just following up on Don's point about risk, I noticed that 32% of the plan has been delivered to date. So what is the situation likely to be at the 31st of March, and what risks does that present to the authority?
Yeah, so as I mentioned, whilst at 17 of the 48 opinion jobs, confident that's going to be at 36. So in terms of percentage of the whole plan, obviously we've been missing some of the non-opinion stuff that we would have done previously. In terms of risk, there will be slightly more. Of course, there will. Less coverage at all will cause that. But I think we've done well in terms of mitigating that being anything substantial. Like I mentioned, the financial training, whilst we haven't done 3 sessions I plan to do, we've done 1 mop-up session and got a different way of delivering it. So I'm comfortable in terms of the coverage that we'll have by the end of March to be able to deliver an opinion which is covering all bases, and anything that we haven't been able to cover as planned will go into next year's plan.
Any other questions? No? And I think, given where we were at the beginning of the year, when we were sort of down to 1 member of staff, and I think we've certainly done well in regards to this, and again through your good offices and your staff, Daniel, as well, working with the internal team, just to say thank you for that. So it does gives us some assurance that rather than nil or very little, we've actually moved forward. So thank you for that. Are there any comments now? No comments. You see the recommendation then. The recommendation is that we note the report. Someone prepare to move, please. Thank you, Councillor Norma. Thank you, Don. I know, I do. All in favour, please? Thank you very much. Next item is the risk management policy. Do we need much on this?
Thanks, Chair. I'll introduce this item. So, before we sort of go into the overview of the report, can I just thank committee for attendance at the session preceding Governance and Audit Committee. So, one of the things that we mentioned on the final slide was future developments and the presentation of the new draft risk management policy to Governance and Audit Committee this evening. So as a council, we are responsible for delivering a multitude of services and activities which cover a multitude of statutory and non-statutory duties. As an organisation, we face many, many complex and wide-ranging opportunities, challenges and risks that could prevent us from delivering our services effectively. Our corporate plan, 22 to 27, also sets out 4 wellbeing objectives. And to deliver these as an organisation, we obviously need to ensure that we've got well-managed opportunities and risks when making those decisions. So, the risk management policy provides an overview of the Council's risk management arrangements, which hopefully committee are a little bit more assured about following the earlier session. And the policy also includes our risk appetite statement on how the Council will manage the opportunities and risks throughout the delivery of our corporate plan over the 5-year period. The policy itself has been developed in consultation, extensive consultation with Cabinet, the Senior Officer Group and other risk-related services, which, as we mentioned previously, encapsulate civil contingencies, our health and safety and insurance teams. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to hand over to Paul. Paul will take you through a little bit more detail of the actual draft risk management policy and highlighting the changes which are in the new policy compared to the old. So I'll hand over to Paul now.
Thank you, Sean. So just to provide a little bit of context to the committee, the risk management policy has been developed, as Sean said, in collaboration with Cabinet and with the senior leaders in the organisation. We held a workshop back in October with both Cabinet and the senior leaders to discuss and understand our risk appetite and our levels of understanding in terms of what risk means to us as an organisation to deliver the corporate plan. In developing this policy, we looked elsewhere outside of the organisation at what best practice looks like, and hence why we've referred to the UK government's Orange Book for risk management, as that's considered to be one of a good best practice approach to take for us as an organisation. So we've based this policy based upon those principles, and in developing the risk appetite statement, one of the key changes that we've made in this particular policy is introduce a more descriptive base and understanding in terms of what we mean by the different levels of risk appetite within the organisation. So you will see on page 48, you'll see 5 levels of risk appetite within the risk appetite statement, ranging from averse all the way through to eager, and a description as to what we mean by each of those. The overall risk appetite statement, I think, is quite clear, and I think it's useful for you to understand this as a committee in terms of when we talk about risk appetite as an organisation, this is about setting the culture of the organisation in terms of how we manage risk and how we manage those opportunities that present themselves in terms of the way in which we deliver our services, deliver projects, and also improve the delivery of services to our communities. The risk appetite statement, therefore, shouldn't just be seen as just some kind of a single point in time. Over the period of time in which this policy will be in place, officers and Cabinet will be having to make different levels of decision based upon the evidence and based upon the data and the information that's presented to them, and therefore having an understanding in terms of how do we accept that risk, and how do we use that, and how do we use this policy to help us to understand and make those decisions. So this new approach which we're taking with the risk appetite statement is to set a kind of level understanding for us and the organisation, and then to enable senior officers to make those decisions, whether it's a strategic, tactical or operational decisions. The other main changes which we've done to the risk appetite statement then is we've looked at the risk appetite areas. So you will note that there's areas such as program project delivery, technology and finance. For each of these, we've also engaged with our partners, so finance and all the other responsible areas, so such as health and safety, etc., to help us inform that statement which we've put into the policy as well. And then just finally, to kind of give you an understanding in terms of what happens next after this Governance and Audit Committee, we will obviously take your feedback and comments in terms of your views in terms of this policy. We will then consider those as part of the development of the final version. The final version will be presented to our Executive Board. They will then approve the final version that will then go to Cabinet, and we're aiming for the policy to go to Cabinet in March. Following the Cabinet's approval, we will then commence a programme to engage with the service areas to inform and communicate the new policy, and then provide training to those officers who need to have that training in terms of understanding what that policy means and how that will impact in terms of their decision making and the risk appetite going forward, and then what's going to be presented to Governance and Audit Committee from 24-25 in terms of the quarterly risk updates presented. Okay, so we're happy to take any questions.
Any questions? Norma?
I think it's a really good document, I have to say. I was quite fascinated by the fairness and equality impact statement, because is this something new? Because I'm used to equality impact statements, but not fairness and equality. So is this a new development?
No, we've had the fairness and equality impacts assessment. I can't remember how long.
I don't think all authorities have
no.
them. We've considered fairness in ours for a while.
And I'm just curious, really, because I think it's good. So I went through it, I thought it was quite good. I just wondered, there wasn't reference to the Modern Slavery Act, and should there be?
That's a really good point. We'll take that away and I'll have a look at that just to make sure that we have that reference.
Because modern slavery is a big thing as well.
Absolutely.
I thought it was a good thing. There was just one bit where, and I have to go back to the document, on the introduction, you've got 2 bullet points. Your first one is outlined the Council's commitment to risk management. And then you've got providing a framework for continuing to embed risk management across the organisation. Should those be 2 points, so you've actually got 3 points? You outline the Council's commitment, then you provide a framework, then you set the Council's appetite.
No, that's another good point, Norma. We'll take that away.
Okay, I'm adding value there.
No,
okay.
Thank you.
That's good, thanks.
Any other questions? I was going to ask the question about the QIA, or the fairness and equalities, because I hadn't seen one before, Rhys, on any document, and my understanding is with any policy procedure, you should always do an EQIA in any event to do it, but I was interested in the fairness one.
Yeah, so just to pick that up, so that Newport has had it's the only local authority, the only local authority area in Wales that has got an independent fairness commission. It's been in existence since 2012. It's currently chaired by Professor Gideon Calder. It has representations from the local authority on there, but a range of other organisations operating across Newport. And it's got a very interesting website where it talks about parameters of fairness, and we try to consider those within our decision making and impacts on fairness, and it's a very interesting piece of work. So I'd recommend you having a look at the information on the website. So yeah, that's not part of the statutory requirement around equality impact assessments, but it's something that we include in Newport.
Any other questions? No? Any comments? No? You go to the recommendation then is that I think subject to the comments made by Norma, the 2 points for you to pick up, that the draft risk management policy and risk appetite statement be approved by this committee for onward submission to the management team and Cabinet. Yeah? Yeah. Okay. Someone move. Councillor Horton, the second. Mr. Reid. All in favour? Thank you very much. Audit, Wales and regulatory bodies 6 months update.
That's
Paul again?
Yeah. So this is so just to remind everybody, so Governance and Audit Committee, we present to you a kind of roundup in terms of all the regulatory activity that is undertaken by Audit Wales, Care Inspectorate Wales and Eston as our external regulators for Newport City Council. So this is just an update in terms of the reports that have been published by each of those bodies since April. So we're going from April to December 2023. So they provide us assurance in terms of the services and the activities which we deliver as an organisation. So Audit Wales provide an overview in terms of us as an organisation, in terms of what we deliver. Care Inspectorate Wales, they're responsible for the social services that are delivered by Newport City Council, and then Eston are responsible for the education services that is delivered by the council, and obviously through the schools as well. So I'm going to provide a summary in terms of this report because it is quite detailed, and if I go for every single thing. We'll be here forever, and I'm sure we don't want to be there doing that. So just to kind of give you an overview in terms of what's happened in the last period, 4 national thematic reports have been published by Audit Wales and 2 local reports. So these are specific reports that are on Newport City Council services, have been published since April. In terms of Care Inspectorate Wales, they have delivered 2 national reports and then 1 inspection of an adult residential provision. And then in terms of Eston, they've delivered 6 school inspections and 5 national thematic reviews as well. So I'm just going to leave it here, and then it's down to the committee to ask any questions. We'll answer them as best as we can.
Any questions? Norma?
Okay. Right. I think one of the points I picked up was about the training. You were going to pick this up as well. 29% of members didn't attend the training, and I want to know what we're doing about that. And I want to know what constitutes the training, because what's really important these days is cyber and information security. I wanted to, confidence that was covered in the training, and that we're doing something about the 29%. There was no mention of the testing of business continuity plans, because that was a requirement, I think, or a recommendation rather, a requirement. We should be testing business continuity plans. You may well have been doing it, but it needs to be in there, because there's no point in having a business continuity plan in place unless you test it every at least every 6 months to a year. On building control, I understand the registration competency issue, but I'm just making an assumption that that's got to be done by the 1st of April this year. And then it's going to take 9 months then to do the action plan. And I thought, well, that's a long time to do an action plan. One would expect to see one in a month or 2, perhaps. So that's the other point. On counter fraud, I think you've mentioned something's been done on the swap audit, and that's going to be coming to the committee, isn't it? So we forget that one. You've got 3 national team reports, 11 recommendations, but it's not clear which recommendations refer to which reports. I think it'd be useful to know that this recommendation related to this national team report. The National Fraud Initiative, again, December 24 seems a long way off for us to see the National Fraud Initiative self-appraisal checklist. Shouldn't that be brought forward? Because, that's like nearly a year away. So sorry, I've got quite a few comments on that.
Do you want me to come in there? I don't know if you've got more, but...
Chair, would it so can I, before Tracy comes in, would it be worth me just adding my comments onto what Norma says regarding...
As long as Tracy's happy to deal with it that way, or do you want to deal with Norma first?
Yeah, because I was going to go as far as cyber and the building control, actually. So do you want to come in on
the councillors' training, which Norma raised first? It's not really good. It's 15 councillors not doing what they should be doing. So, again, I just wanted to know what steps are being taken to ensure that we get 100%. And I was going to ask that, as a committee, we ask for feedback on this as to whether we have to ask for names of culprits, because I think this should have 100% attendance because of the importance. So, just to add to what Norma was saying.
Thank you. So on cyber, I'll answer because I'm cyber as well as risk. I wouldn't want to mislead the committee. So every councillor has training before they can access any system. So there is no councillor that's had no training. One cannot access the council systems without a certain level of training. That said, Audit Wales did comment on additional training on cyber. Since, I think, the last time this was reported to the committee, actually that number has gone up. I'd want the committee to note that. So we've had a further session. I think you said something similar last time. We've had another session. That number has gone up. Clearly, we continue to offer those sessions. We also supplement that with online training. So we can continue to chase that. I think you asked what it was. It was a interactive online session. I mean, people doing it rather than a computer. The initial training is an online session. This is an interactive online session with colleagues running through all aspects of data protection, information management, information security, including cyber controls. That was the nature of the training. We do need to continue to press on that. That is probably the highest numbers we've got to date, and since the last time that has improved, we continue to chase on that. Regarding the business continuity testing, yes, and that doesn't quite meet the control put in by Audit Wales, but the plans are being reviewed and therefore testing will be the later stage, but noted that is outstanding. I was also going to go as far as the building control, which isn't me as a head of service, but in terms of the actions, I guess we note the committee feedback there about the length of time taken to respond to that actions, although you'll see in the report that building control colleagues have given reasons why that's the case, and as a senior management team, that's been appreciated given the resources we've got and the other challenges in that area. I know you had more, but I just wanted to pause there, and I don't know if you want to come in on councillors.
Yeah, I suppose just a bit of guidance from me around that comment, really. So the compliance training around cyber, every member has gone through, right? So I think we need to put that there. That's done. They can't access the system. This is additional training. The committee may wish to make a recommendation about whether that's mandatory or not. And I think that's probably as far as the committee's role could go with that. You can make a recommendation, you can make a comment on it. I don't think, because it's not mandatory training, it's not compliance training, it's not the sort of training we would require somebody to do in order to access the systems, because they can't access the systems if they haven't done it. However, you know, I also come from the cyber background with Tracy. My view would be that is an ever-changing environment, and that training should be undertaken on a very regular basis.
A question then. Do you offer training that isn't necessary?
There's a difference between things we would consider mandatory. So there's a mandatory list of training for members and officers, and there's a list of training that we would suggest is useful and important.
Do you
but sometimes I've not got the authority to make that onto the mandatory list.
Oh, I'm not asking you. I'm just asking you, do you offer training that you would like people to take and you think it would be good to take?
Yeah. I just to say, so the Civil Contingencies Manager, myself and Gwen Beese undertook a training session for members before Christmas on personal security. It's not mandatory, but it's a useful thing to do.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Just to point out to some of the members as well who don't, as members, if we don't attend training, all slides are then issued to us anyway afterwards, so we do get a chance to have a look at them as well. So if we don't attend the training for some unknown reason, all slides are being issued out to all colleagues and members.
Just to disagree with my colleague, I have asked for some slides and I've not been able to get them. And I'm not going to keep asking and asking. And this was for a training course that I attended, an in-depth training course that the slides to have would have been useful. But that's for another day. Okay.
I'm sure the officers will pick that up outside the meeting. Norma?
Thank you, Chair. I think my worry is, and this isn't in the public domain because it's not in the interest of these organisations to have it in the public domain. But my worry is cyber and information security. I know of one major organisation in Wales that's, you know, had its systems shut down, and another global organisation actually, I know the finance director, has had the same thing happen. And it can happen so easily, like someone just clicking on the wrong thing. So that cyber security training is absolutely vital because, you know, we're living in a very fragile world as far as technology is concerned, and there are lots of 16-year-olds in Russia, you know, playing about and wanting to, you know, and many other countries disrupt our systems here in the UK.
Yeah, and I, you know, totally accept that, and you know, I suppose this is an offer. There's a more detailed conversation to have around this to assure the committee, but that is not a conversation to have in a public meeting like this one. Okay, so if we could, as I said, we take on board the points, and if the committee wants to have that other conversation as part of a part 2 discussion, that's absolutely fine.
Yeah, I think in some respects Norma must have read my notes. As you know, I picked up the issue about 36 members, 51, and I take on board the points about training originally took place in July 2023, but I'm sure that the audit report, which was dealt with previously, wasn't issued until August 23, which is obviously after the date of the initial training. Whether they were aware of that or not, I've got no idea. And then following that, I assume then there was a further session to deal with that. I think I would agree with Norma and Don that we do need to raise this up the chain as a comment from this committee, that we are concerned that there are 15 members out there who are either not received formal training. I agree with you, it should be an ongoing piece of work because it's changing daily and weekly. I'm not a computer expert, but I think we need to raise that with the members. And also the point that Norma said about testing of our arrangements, and I think we mentioned that previously, who independently checks this, who throws in a phishing email or something like that, which ain't going to do much damage, but is it being picked up, if you see what I mean?
I suppose just for clarity, I think those are separate things. So there's a whole series of things the local authority does in order to ensure cyber compliance. And again, we're quite happy to have a conversation about what all those things are outside of it. The business continuity bit is rather less of the IT bit. But if all your IT systems go down, how do you operate? Now, you could argue that, you know, we've tested our business continuity arrangements to the nth degree because we did 2 years of it during COVID in all sorts of situations. However, you know, that is the recommendations come out of the audit, and you know, I think what it refers to is some changes in legislation that we're dealing with as well. But they just to separate those things are, and it's a very valid point. You know, there should be an arrangement in place for, you know, if we have a massive power failure in here, how does CCTV operate, for example? Yeah. So, you know, it's those sorts of things. So there's a story behind it, but there's also a valid recommendation and a plan associated with that. Okay.
The other issue, obviously, Rhys, which you may be able to answer, is whilst there's the cabinet member who's got responsibility for the issue, and then there's a directorate service area, shouldn't there be a lead officer who is responsible and accountable for delivering these recommendations? Because obviously the Constitution, as you quite rightly point out to me all the time, operational matters are down to officers. But there is no one listed in this as to who the officer is responsible overall for the delivery of these recommendations.
Thank you, Chair. We noted that. Just to kind of give a little bit of assurance, so all of the Audit Wales, Care Inspectorate Wales and the Eston reports, they will go to the head of service, and ultimately it's the head of service who is responsible for those reports. So in terms of the accountability, that's why we have the service areas and the respective service areas in there. So we can make that a little bit clearer, and we'll have a look at that in the next report that comes to you, just to see if we can clarify that.
Someone needs to be responsible, not a service area. You know, we need to say, you know, is this individual, I'm not wanting to blame them, but there needs to be accountability.
Yeah, it needs to have it. It's the post. This is the post that's responsible for
okay.
that.
Obviously, there was an issue about the National Fraud Initiative, which Norm has brought up, Myrian, which was, I think, the issue about waiting until December 24. But didn't I get some reassurance from Dan that they're going to pick that up earlier?
Yeah, you did. So there will be two pieces of work that we are doing. One is we are mopping up on the NFI work that's been undertaken this year. A lot of those checks are undertaken within service areas. So therefore, internal auditors go and do a mop-up as to what progress is like and what has been reported back on the NFI portal. So there'll be a report from Dan on that in sort of March, April time, as to where we are on the current sequence, because NFI is a 2-year kind of rolling thing. And then, of course, there'll be that bigger piece of work on the fraud risk assessment. And, you know, that will probably give us a high, medium, low areas, and that will then inform our audit plan over a number of years then, as it were. So we'll be doing more fraud-focused work in our audit plan, as well as the kind of regular kind of assurance work as well. It's all assurance, but some of it will now be much more focused on fraud. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I think. Sorry. The other issues, which were where there were numerous recommendations, like the one there were 20 recommendations in one of the CIW reports, is just picking up in the narrative that what has already been dealt with, rather than just picking up one or two points. Because again, I think in some we've got recommendation 1 is what we're saying here, and there's no mention of the others. So I think it's just a point in narrative to say they'd already been dealt with.
Thank you, Chair. We'll take that back to the relevant officers within Children's Services, just to kind of give a little bit of assurance to the committee around that piece of work, because that's a very big review that was completed. And, you know, as is explained in the report here, there is a kind of regional effort being made in terms of ensuring that those recommendations are put into place. So, yeah, we'll feed that back to the relevant officers, and we'll see if we can improve on that in the next report.
Lovely. And the other one is in regards to the ESTIN issue, which we picked up in regards to the additional learning needs system, where education have said that all schools are now aware of their duties under the legislation, and nearly all schools, ALNCOs, have received training. It doesn't say all, you know, they all should have received. It's the same issue about the counsellors in reality, isn't it? You know.
So we spoke with our education service area after this point was originally raised. What transpired out of that is the education services use ESTIN's ratings in terms of how they assess, and they didn't realise that it has a different interpretation for the Governance and Audit Committee. So we're working with them just to make sure that they're clear in terms of what they mean when they are reporting back. So, yeah, we were advised that by our education colleagues.
No, that's right. As long as we just get that assurance that, you know, nearly all doesn't mean all, you know.
Absolutely.
And in some of these pieces of legislation, it's very important that all get it. So thank you, Paul, for picking that up. Any other questions? Don?
I just wanted to go back to, on page 66 with the national fraud thing, where you've got the old chestnut, 13 out of 22 Welsh local authorities identified 95% of the fraud. You know, the question is I know Newport is one of the 13 who supplied the 95%. I'm just wondering, from someone reading it, it doesn't read clear that Newport isn't one of them. That, you know, and I was just wondering under NCC action that whether there should be a comment saying that Newport is one of the people who has identified 95%.
That was addressed when we last reported it, and I don't think we might have missed that, because I remember Audit Wales confirmed that we weren't like one of those ones there.
No, Gareth's already confirmed it.
Yeah.
I think it would just be good to read it.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. We'll take that on board and we'll note that.
One last one, Gareth. This one was on page 68 with the report there. It was more on the report. There's no. This is just to say I'm really pleased with this. There's no recommendations, but to see the action that the council and the officers take is brilliant. Not resting on the laurel, no recommendations. You can see there that there's action points they're looking at it, and really I just wanted to congratulate.
Yeah, okay. Any other questions, anyone? No? Any comments? No? You see the recommendation. Let's get back. Let me find it. Recommendation is that we ask to consider the contents of the report, which we've done, of the regulatory activity complete, and where necessary recommendations have been raised, Council takes the necessary action. So obviously we've made comments, if they could be taken back to Council, presumably, for consideration. Yep, we've got them minuted. Yep. Someone prepared to move, please. Thank you. Councillor Harris, seconder. Thank you, Mr. Reid. All in favour? Thank you. Item 7, Capital and Treasury Management Strategy 24-25, pages 85 to 146. Robert.
Okay.
Going to take us through page by page, you, or?
I can if you want me to, that's fine. No, thank you, Chair. So yeah, it is obviously a very long report. So I will talk you through the sort of structure of the report and some of the key points, but clearly if there are any questions, then I'll try and address those afterwards. So this is the annual Capital and Treasury Management Strategy report. It focuses on the Council's capital expenditure plans for the year and beyond, the financial impact of those, particularly in terms of borrowing and our investment strategy for the year. There's a cover report, 2 main appendices, one for the capital strategy, one for the Treasury Management Strategy. They're all intertwined, they're all inherently linked. Ultimately, we've also got the capital programme within there, which is ultimately sort of Cabinet to take a view on, but it's all there for completeness. As you'll be aware from previous years, both strategies plus the borrowing limits and prudential indicators that are contained within them are ultimately signed off by full Council. So they come to Governance and Audit Committee, then to Cabinet, then to full Council. So Governance and Audit Committee's role today is to consider the report and add any sort of comments that they wish Cabinet and Council to consider when they take a look at these strategies. Because it's a big document, it's a wide-ranging document, it's quite a technical document, as we did last year. We've included a few questions, points for consideration that the committee may wish to refer to, and they're set out in paragraph 8 of the covering report. And I think just to remind everyone that the kind of key underlying principles that we have to abide by and demonstrate in terms of borrowing in particular are that borrowing is affordable, prudent and sustainable, and that's the requirement of the Prudential Code which we're required to follow. So that's something that's a theme throughout the report and something we obviously have to consider quite carefully. So in terms of the context, it's a 5-year capital programme. We refresh it every year now, since we've introduced a rolling approach to programme management, which started the year in question actually. We adopted it for the first time last year. So as I said, it's been embedded, and that's now the way that we operate. In conjunction with that, we've also strengthened our governance arrangements around the capital programme. So we've introduced from this year a capital assurance group. So that's a small group of senior officers who are reviewing the capital programme, taking assurance from heads of service that projects are going to be delivered in line with their profiles, ideally in budget, but also that group is taking a look at capital bids as well to ensure that things are only getting onto the programme when the time is right, when they're affordable, but critically when there is a realistic chance of delivery. So that's something that's changed in the last year and hopefully strengthens everything that goes around these strategies. Something else just to be aware of is there is a new accounting standard which is being adopted from 1st of April 24, so all local authorities will have to do that. It's IFRS 16 leases, and basically what that requires us all to do as local authorities is now treat lease arrangements as capital expenditure rather than revenue, which is what we currently do. So that impacts upon our programme, and particularly in terms of our limits, because we now have to allow for the sort of capital value of lease payments not yet made within our borrowing limits, because it effectively is a form of debt that we're now adding to the balance sheet. Those outstanding amounts then unwound over time against the revenue account via an annual MRP charge. So our limits are basically, you'll notice, will jump up quite a bit between 23-24 and 24-25, and that's simply because we're recognising, as we have to, the adoption of that standard. So in terms of the capital strategy, so we look at it over a sort of 10-year period. The programme that underpins that is, as it was last year, largely comprised of ongoing schemes or schemes that have previously been approved, plus the annual sums that we have for things like asset maintenance and fleet renewal. In the early years, there's no additional new borrowing capacity, and that's because of affordability. Although you will note that from 27-28, we are starting to introduce indicatively only £7 million a year of new borrowing that can be afforded from our existing revenue capital financing budget. So that's a bit of a step change from where we were a year ago, where we were sort of flatly saying we could not afford new borrowing, but we're sort of tentatively including that now, modelling it so that that can help with planning future capital programmes, and where we know we've got pressures coming down the line, we can start to plan around that. But ultimately, we can only approve, or that headroom can only be approved nearer the time when we've got more certainty around affordability and sustainability in particular. So with that in mind, the pressure for new schemes still needs to be met from existing capital headroom, which is largely comprised of uncommitted balances within our capital expenditure reserve and any uncommitted capital receipts. Our existing borrowing headroom is almost zero, but as I said, we are looking a bit more longer term that may change. That obviously presents a challenge in terms of addressing things like asset maintenance backlogs, which most local authorities are grappling with, and also the impact, particularly over the last few years, of construction cost inflation, which has been significant. And therefore, we need to try and take opportunities to increase the headroom wherever possible via one-off resources, particularly as we don't currently have the scope to increase our borrowing headroom. So in terms of the programme that's being proposed, so it stands at 125.6 million inclusive of that additional indicative borrowing headroom, 66 million in 24-25. It's important to note that that is more than we've spent in previous years. It's possibly less than we're going to spend in this current year, but it is still very challenging to deliver a programme of that scale. And that figure will almost inevitably increase by the time we get to April 24 because of further slippage from this financial year and new grant-funded schemes that will be added to the programme. The report includes the borrowing limits that we're proposing. Council ultimately approved those. And the two critical ones, the operational boundary, which is our sort of recommended maximum borrowing exposure to meet our capital programme aspirations, but also the authorised limit, which is higher than the operational boundary to allow for sort of day-to-day cash flow management requirements that might have to be met through short-term borrowing. Also, the report reaffirms our internal borrowing approach, which is basically using our existing cash balances before we undertake external borrowing, which generally is in our interest because of interest costs being so significant, particularly at the moment. And that's the approach we've had for a number of years and are proposing that we continue to do so. Just quickly, a couple of other points. So the liability benchmark graph is included within the report. It's something we've talked about previously. It forms part of the regular updates that you receive throughout the year as well. And that just gives a long-term impression of where our external borrowing requirements are heading. And what it demonstrates is that we do have an increased borrowing need, but also, particularly of note, over the next sort of 12 to 18 months, we have a significant refinancing need as well. So we have some quite big loans maturing about a year from now, which we'll need to refinance, and that those loans are actually on fairly low rates at the moment. So we know that when we refinance those, they'll be at higher rates, but we are we are budgeting and allowing for that in our forecasts. And hopefully we're being prudent in respect of those prospective interest rates. Alongside that, there's also a capital financing cost chart that demonstrates that the cost of the borrowing that we have currently and that we anticipate having over the next 10 years would appear to be affordable based on the existing revenue budget that we have available, so meeting that test of it being affordable. So that's the capital strategy. The Treasury management strategy, as I said earlier, it's inherently linked to the capital strategy. It outlines our approach to borrowing. As I said, we have an internal borrowing approach. We aim generally for a low but certain cost of finance, and we will consider a new short-term borrowing as we need to manage our day-to-day cash flow requirements. In terms of investing, again, unchanged from previous years, we prioritise security and liquidity over yield, and we will always try and get the best return for our investments that we can, but not at the expense of security and liquidity. And also it just reminds everyone that we have a £10 million investment in a product called covered bonds, a very secure product, giving us a good return, and that's the minimum we need to have to retain our professional client status under the MiFID II regulations and access preferential borrowing rates through the PWOB and other institutions. So just to conclude, there's a head of finance summary within the covering report. I think that's quite a good reference point just to hear the view of the head of finance in terms of, are we meeting that test of the programme and the borrowing inherently within it being affordable, prudent and sustainable. We believe it is. The report says as much, but clearly it's something that needs to be kept under close monitoring going forward, because as we've seen over the last sort of 2 years, things like interest rates can change very quickly and be very volatile, and that has a material impact on our affordability. So happy to take any questions.
Yeah, thank you, Robert. Are there any questions from anyone? No questions. I've seen the recommendations, obviously, which were asked to comment on the Capital Strategy Appendix 2. Also comment on the draft programme, which is shown in Appendix 1, which presumably is your proposed capital programme moving forward for the next 5 years, I should imagine. Yes. Is it right and proper we comment on that, given that's a matter that is set by the Council, not by this committee? All I would be saying on that, as long as you've got the funding to meet the requirements there, carry on, chaps. It's just that assurance I need. So I didn't know whether it needed to be in there, because obviously if Council's agreed it, we're not in a position to say, actually, I don't think you should go ahead with a new leisure centre. We want something else. The Council's agreed this is its capital programme. I think, in my view, I don't know whether anyone else agrees, but in my view, as long as the Council's got the funding, the necessary revenue funding to meet the requirements of what you set out in this plan, then so be it.
I think that's a fair comment. I think it's included in there as a sort of, I guess, the programme in totality set against the context of affordability. But as you say, individual schemes and the makeup of the programme is very much a cabinet decision.
So the assumption I made, it is all affordable currently within your medium-term financial plan moving forward on that basis. Obviously, some of the figures are reducing quite substantially over the 5-year term. It's interesting that picking up the issue we were on about asset maintenance and that, it is set at 1.371 and 1.5 thereafter, and presumably infrastructure, which is highways, is 1.432 million. But, if that is what the Council's agreed, then we're not here to interfere in that. And I think the capital strategy meets that requirement to ensure that you've got the requisite funding in place to deal with it and how you deal with your loans and that. And the second one, obviously, is the Treasury management document. Exactly the same. It's set out for the next year. What is going to happen. The only other question is on some of these loans which you've got coming up for renewal. Is there a likelihood that you'll do that on a short-term basis, if the interest rates are lower, or if there's a good preferential rate for a longer term, you'll move the money around that way.
Yeah, we would, these are long-term loans that are maturing. We will likely look to replace on a long-term basis. We'd only tend to use short-term loans where there is a clear short-term need. There is a long-term need to replace these loans. Normally long-term loans will be slightly more expensive than short-term borrowing, but it does give you that certainty then over that period. Whereas you take a short-term or a variable rate loan, there's always that risk that when it comes to renewal, you could be hit with a much higher rate. So, what we always do when we take out new borrowing is we consult with Arlene Close as our advisors to get a sense of where they think the interest rates might be heading. Yeah. If there's a sense that, by taking, say, 6 months to make a decision, we could get a better rate, we could consider short-term borrowing in the intervening period, but we'd need quite a lot of certainty from them in that respect. But
that's okay.
They're the sorts of things we would consider, definitely.
No, and I think obviously this report is very relevant given the press over the last couple of weeks about debt in local authorities, and I think there's a lack of understanding about how an authority works and that, but but there we are. If there are no other question, comment, Dawn?
Yeah, I just wanted to say I really enjoyed reading the report, and almost as a resident, it's on not the most exciting subject on the face of God's earth, but as a Newport resident, that gave me a lot of confidence. So that this was being well run, well thought through, well established. So I wanted to say thank you for that. Also to say that, like on page 89, where you gave under point 8, where you gave us the 4 questions to consider, they were really helpful. They were helpful pointers, and it influenced the way I was looking at the report as well and doing that. So I found that really helpful. Thank you.
Any other comments? No? I think the recommendation in reality then is in regards to the capital strategy. We note and presumably approve it for onward submission to wherever it's got to go, subject to it all being affordable, because that's the issue, is affordability, and the same for the Treasury management strategy, that we approve that for moving forward. Someone move, please. Thank you, Norma. Thank you, Councillor Horton. Second. Anyone against? Nope. Okay. Item 10, the work programme, draft work programme. Thank you, Rhys. It's there, yes.
Well, all I was going to say, given the conversation we had about cyber, and I know Bethan's on the call as well, do you want to build that into your work programme to have a part 2 conversation around that report and the recommendations associated with it? Because it was in my mind, because Bethan and I have had that conversation earlier today as well. So
I'll be guided by yourselves.
Do
you want to discuss that outside the meeting?
I think if we look at doing that, maybe not in the next meeting, I think that's what Tracy was saying, but maybe in the meeting after that.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Bethan, I know Bethan has appeared on the screen now, if that's okay with Bethan.
Can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
Okay, sorry, the audio isn't great your end. Sorry, Rhys, were you talking about putting the cyber review into closed session? Was that it? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, if we deal with that in the May meeting, presumably. You're happy with that? Because it was issues. So apart from that, then the recommendations. Sorry, Tracy, go on.
Sorry, can I raise something? So
yes.
We also had a request from the Public Service Ombudsman
for complaints.
Wales for complaints, the complaints lead, to come and talk to the Governance and Audit Committee. So we were going to suggest that for next time ahead of the committee, if that would suit, perhaps again at 4 o'clock, to talk to the committee about complaints and the kind of position they take, their view, their standard policies, compliance, and take any questions.
No, that'd be good.
Would that be helpful?
Yeah, that'd be great.
Thank you.
Lovely.
Thanks.
Okay, the recommendation is that we endorse the proposed schedule for future meetings, and confirm a list of people then and at the moment. And someone prepared to move? Thank you very much. Seconder? Yes, thank you very much. All in favour? No, the next meeting, number 11, 28th of March. Can I just thank everyone for attending, thank you all for your contributions, and good night.